toasting, joking too. Sipping and roasting is what we do. Light 'em up, drink 'em down. Whiskey and cigars all around. Cheers, y'all.
That sounds like the start of a party, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this fine radio program, podcast, and video extravaganza known internationally as the world-famous Smoking and Toasting.
Worldwide.
Our program's
These
all
guys
about
watch the
craft
show.
beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. And it's show number 338. We're going to get fancy today with Courvoisier.
I think that's really a big number. That's next to 1,000. That's almost as many years as Courvoisier has been open.
It's halfway to 400. We know that. So
At least.
so we're good
I've
with
done
that.
the math.
Our guest today is Michael Fawthrop. Michael is the brand ambassador for Courvoisier, which, you know, my question every time we have a brand ambassador on for a spirit is, how'd you get this job? Like,
and why do you have one?
and why don't I have that job? I could do it. Come on now. So we'll get to that. We'll do a little bit of tasting. We will taste some beers as well on today's program from Blanco, Texas, and Real Ale Brewing, a beer that Ian actually handed me a number of weeks ago. We just haven't gotten to it until this week. It's their Hill Country Bock. So I'm excited about tasting that. Also from Matchless Brewing in Tumwater, Washington, we'll be trying their Rainbow Jetplane Hazy IPA.
I've never even heard of that.
Tumwater's got some great evergreens, too, by the way, if you ever check it out.
And from Portland, Oregon, and Gigantic Brewing Company. And we've had some Gigantic darker beers on the show before. Today we'll be doing one called Massive. It's a barrel-aged barley wine.
I love it already.
My ancestors are excited for me.
You had me at barley wine.
Yeah. And so we'll also be trying some expressions from Courvoisier, and we'll be doing all of the regular stuff we do. We'll tell you about some cigars to watch for. Oh, and we'll bring you a little thing we like to call drinking news. Here's our drinking news teaser headline. Wait, you want to give me an injection where?
Oh, I brought the good stuff, too.
All right, so we'll get to that as the program continues. Plus, they're building a new Monte Cristo cigar bar in Paris, Las Vegas, which I'm really excited about. So we'll tell you a little bit about that. We have the winners of the 2023 World Beer Cup. If we have time, we can go through some of those things. And so it should be another one of those shows where we do a little drinking.
Today's show is action-packed.
A little drinking, a little talking. So that's what we're all about. 338 episodes in, and we have not yet changed the formula.
That's right. No one stopped us.
No one stepped in to stop us. So
The feds have not been listening.
thank goodness for that. So it should be an interesting episode. It's been an interesting week for that.
Question
matter.
for you.
Yes?
Interesting week. Did you get a chance to smoke a cigar this week?
I did, and let me just tell you about this, because this is I want to say this is a little different from my normal report about these type of things. I smoked the Nica Libre by Aganorsa Leaf, the Belicoso.
Oh, so I remember when we went by CI, you bought one of those.
I did. So I bought a box of the Olivas because
Right,
I
so
tried
as
that
did
before. But I was like, okay, I want to try this one because I hadn't tried
Down
that.
to like 6 of those Olivas
So
left,
picked it
by
up
the
when we
way.
were on location for the show at Cigars International.
Suck 'em down.
In Contro. Nica Libre's always been a favorite
Yes.
brand of mine. Back before anybody really knew who A.J. Fernandez was, and I am the self-confessed A.J. Fernandez fanboy. Before anybody knew who A.J. was, he was doing special blends for Cigars International and their related sites and stores, and Nica Libre was one of the most modestly priced of those. It was also one of the best. In fact,
So good.
The original blend is so good that it has been called the poor man's Padron, which is, I think, spot on. And I can also tell you right on the spot that those cigars are actually better than Padron's own less expensive cigars. Just the basic line on the Padrones. Now, you get up into the the Anniversarios and those.
The
they're
1926
tough
series
to beat.
and all. Yeah.
Tough to beat. But anyway, fast forward a few years, and CI has expanded the Nica Libre line, most recently by commissioning blends from Oliva, which both Ian and I have raved and raved about. And also one of the more interesting cigar companies in the business today, Aganorsa Leaf. So I grabbed a Belicoso size the day we did the show at CI, and I wanted to save it to smoke and talk about it on the show. And it has been sitting in my humidor just kind of taunting me for several weeks now.
Waving its finger.
Yeah, so I decided it was time. The Nica Libre by Aganorsa is a Nicaraguan puro, and it's softly box pressed with a kind of rounded torpedo tip. So it looks like a torpedo, but it's not quite so pointy. I got deep, rich leather notes on the pre-light sniff. Cold draw gave me more leather and a note of salted caramel. So this is looking pretty good, right?
Right.
I snipped off the tip and lit the baby up, and I was greeted by a kind of a rush of flavors to the palate on the first puff. Not exactly a Nicaraguan pepper blast, but a definite early mix of flavors that got me kind of beginning to work to sort them all out, right? The leather note I got on the pre-light was there, along with a distinct woodsy flavor. I'll go with cedar, I guess, and a note of earth as well. Surprisingly, not a lot of pepper, which I'm used to from Nicaraguan tobacco, but there was a little peppery tang on my tongue on the finish. By the second third, I was picking up baking spices, maybe a bit of cinnamon, cocoa, and hay, pepper and earth on the retrohale. And as I got to the final third, the pepper finally became the dominant note. And to be honest, it kind of pushed everything else away from my palate.
Loaded up a bit.
So much less complexity all the way to the end of the cigar. Construction was very good. No problems with runs or uneven burn. Ash held on for about an inch before it dropped, thankfully not on my shirt. So despite this mix of different notes that I described, because I was like looking back at my notes and I was thinking, wow, this looks like it's all going to add up to be fantastic. I wound up being a little underwhelmed by the Nica Libre by Aganorsa Leaf. I guess you could say that the combination of how much I love the original blend, and especially the Oliva blend, combined with the respect that I've got for the Aganorsa brand, set my expectations maybe a little too high.
Oh.
And this stick really didn't meet them. That's not to say it was a bad cigar. It was just fine. But when I smoked the Nica Libre by Oliva, I found myself wondering, how can Oliva let this one out of their line to be a cigar that they do for someone else? Like, it's so good. This should be in their core line,
It
right?
should just be their cigar.
With the Aganorsa, I felt like they kind of wound up with a blend that was not quite worthy of their own line. They said, okay, we'll give this one to Nica Libre, right? And it did kind of remind me of a half-decent budget cigar. You know what I mean? Like if you bought something for $4 or $5 and you smoked it, it's pretty good. Yeah, not bad. That's kind of the feeling that I got from it, especially by the time I was done. And therein lies the biggest issue that I had with this cigar, because it retails for about $10 a stick.
And that's twice what you wanted to pay for it.
Yeah,
kind of big.
Although you can find it cheaper sometimes online, but that makes it a couple of bucks higher than the Oliva, and it just doesn't deliver. My advice: stay with the core Nica Libres, or better yet, the Oliva. And for a couple of dollars more, get Aganorsa's own JFR Maduro or the Guardian of the Farm Night Watch, and you'll get a much better bang for your buck. Not a bad cigar, but not a great one either. And not a $10 stick in my estimation. So price to quality, I will give it a 4.
Ouch. For those of you out there who aren't familiar with our price to quality scale, it's a 1 to 10 scale, and 5 is right where you get exactly what you pay for.
Right. Everything aligns. It's a 5.
Right. If you're getting a little more than you paid for, you're going to rate it above a 5. If you get a little less than you paid for, you rate it a little below.
And interestingly, this cigar is a couple of bucks more than the Oliva.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If they're pricing it and they're pricing it at the same price as some of Aganorsa's premium cigars, because Guardian of the Farm is what, $1 more or something like that for some of the sticks. So and that's a great cigar.
A wonderful. The Guardian of the Farm Night Watch. That thing is amazing.
Yeah,
it really is. I was thinking about this when I was writing my notes down for this for the show, and that is that. Partly because when we do, these reviews or these tasting notes, we're always conscious of what the cigar costs because of the because of the price to quality, right? We go back and look it up if we don't remember.
Right.
Which is different than before we were doing the show. I might go buy a bunch of cigars, put them in the humidor. By the time I smoke them, I may not remember what it costs, right? So it has really changed the way I look at things, where I go, this is a $10 cigar, but that AJ that I had was $8, and it's better. Like you're
that
really
Hoyo Black
doing
is amazing,
right? You're really doing that kind of comparison all the time.
Now, are you a cigar smoker at all?
Oh, for sure. Actually, shout out to Urban Smoke. I was just was there last night,
Nice.
hanging out at Urban
Nice.
Smoke, Open
Yeah.
Surf. That's Dallas Street, I think. But I'd have to check that. Google. I had a couple cognacs with my cigar.
I love that.
I did have a nice full-bodied. I always, when I'm having a cognac in a cigar, I always try to grab the cigar with the notes of the cognac to kind of add a little bit of what I call orchard fruit, like apricot, peach, or
Sure.
something, and something a little bit more floral. I know for the listeners out there that sounds strange to say a cigar is floral, but you can really, with the blend and attributes, when you blend the tobacco, the sum is greater than the individual parts. So you can really get great stuff. As you mentioned, cinnamon, baking spices. I try to go for, especially the what I was drinking was our XO, our minimum 10-year blend. So quite a bit of time in French oak. So you do want that baking spice to kind of amplify the flavor.
Right. There are certain characteristics of certain cigars that go better with certain spirits than others. And it's really the case with beer. We talk about this a lot. I love a great IPA, and I don't mind it being bitter. But that is almost always going to wrestle with the cigar. Almost. I hate to use the word ruin, but it really does take away your appreciation.
flavors fight,
It's a bit of a palate wrecker, you know? And yet I love that. So I save those for when I'm not having a cigar. And when I am, I'll have something maybe that's maltier.
We call those inside beers.
There you go. I like that. That works for me. Spirits, however, can be a lot more, not only a lot more forgiving, but can be a lot more aligned with certain flavors and stuff as well.
Speaking of not only forgiving, but cognac and cigars.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, come on.
So do you
It's
have...
hard to even go wrong.
They
have
married in the 1800s and really never broke up ever since as well.
Do you have a favorite cigar or type of cigar that you like to smoke when you're having Courvoisier?
I actually get a lot of recommendations from the cognac itself. I never try to just stick in one box as
Gotcha.
well. Especially you never know with what you mentioned. I've never heard of those releases as well. The one you were semi-impressed with, and I would love to learn more kind of about it. But I don't really stick to one box because I always, as an ambassador, you'd be surprised, we always have to actually get market insights and get gaining back. So you're constantly what we call gemba, and you're assessing the market and looking around. So you actually have to be dibble-dabbling and sampling, which is a long way to say I actually just do whatever makes it feel good and really take recommendations from experts like yourself.
So it sounds like that's almost the inverse of...
It's exact opposite of what we do.
What Ian has taught me, and we've even had a couple of events themed around this, which he calls the whiskey sniff. And why don't you explain how that works?
So, and it works with any spirit, but the whiskey sniff is one of the things that I would do is I'd go outside and I'd light my cigar, and I would get through the very first initial light of it, and you get the flavors in your palate. Then I would go inside and I would start popping open my whiskey and just nosing it. And what happens is you will find one that just, you get it, you know? Your nose
if you
will
have
tell you.
the number of whiskeys that you have in your bar, you will find one. If you only have two, you might or might not find one.
Well, if you only have two, your choice is easy.
Okay, that's fair enough. Which one of these is better, right?
Adding on to that part, because I'm such an expert in cognac, I can accurately describe the flavor and kind of where the palate is going to hit and the longevity. So I kind of dive right in and really discover it myself. And what I call a light bulb over the head moment, or what they call in coffee, the God shot, where it all clicks like a circuit and the electricity really comes together.
I'd say it forms like Voltron.
Yeah, I'm intimidated
Hell yeah.
now because when we taste this, I'm just gonna taste and go, this is good, and I'll let you guys describe it. All right, we got to take a break. This is Smoking and Toasting. Our program's all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. Michael Fawthrop is our guest. He's a brand ambassador for Courvoisier, and we'll be tasting some very soon. We'll be right back. Welcome back at Smoking and Toasting. Our show is all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. Our guest today is Michael Fawthrop, who is the brand ambassador for Courvoisier. So, I have to ask, because I have to ask every brand ambassador this, how did you land this job?
Did your
What were
high school
guidance
counselor tell you that this job was available?
They said the normal thing. Same thing to you. We're going to be complete failures. Really?
Exactly.
How did you
got
know?
that messaging too?
I totally did. I totally
Awesome.
did. In fact, it was something like, if you don't stop interrupting and making jokes in class, you're going to be a total failure. That
Hope
was
you like shovels, kid.
yeah.
Pretty much, they're like, have you heard of bricklaying?
Yeah.
It's a great option. So I was a bartender for over 10 years, most notably at Cannon Whiskey and Bitters Emporium in Seattle, Washington. So amazing selection of whiskeys and spirits, largest in the Western Hemisphere.
Nice.
So it was a really deep...
Okay, wait. Stop. Largest in the Western Hemisphere. That is a major claim.
For
That's
all of
massive.
the people out there, the Western Hemisphere is North America, South America, and Hawaii, which is in North America too. But it's so Jamie Boudreau is the owner and proprietor. He was an incredible mentor for me. Took a great chance for me as a young lad, really just sniffing whiskey back in the day.
Yeah.
And essentially, I met Murray Stenson there. And if you don't know Murray Stenson, he is one of the best bartenders in the world, reinvented the last word, Playboy Bartender of the Year, one of the first guys to get Tales of the Cocktail plates for best bartender. So when I met him, he was 64. He had 42 years of experience.
Wow.
Yeah, so say that
probably
again,
knows something
42
about
years.
bars.
Yeah, probably has figured a little something out.
He had a good nose, I like to say, too. And an incredible Rolodex. I also met Paul Clark through him, the editor of Imbibe. And so with that kind of trifecta of influence, I learned a lot very quickly. I'm very grateful for these people. This was my young 20s and mid-20s, so I didn't really take it too seriously.
Sure.
I was really about...
Because you don't take anything seriously, in your early
then.
and mid-20s.
But working with Jamie, working with Murray, they showed me that education, you can actually really help your economic situation. So if you're educated about what's behind you, you can really increase the guest check, therefore increase your tip at the end of the day.
Right.
And when you get them coming back, just leave a little bit to be desired. So, and we had quite a few options at Cannon, and we started doing vintage spirits. And long story short, building that Rolex of regulars, I met Gary Obligacion, the director of operations for the Alinea Group. And after I worked at Cannon, I had the opportunity to stage at the Aviary, and then I moved to Chicago, Illinois. It was amazing, very cold, but super fun.
Yep. Great city.
Great city, great drinking town, great food town. And
Except for the Malort thing. But
it is a thing.
Yeah.
If you try it in a Mai Tai or some type of tropical drink, it can really help folks out there.
No,
But
I'm sorry. There is no
I
appropriate
introduced him
use
to
for
Malort.
Malort. And when he says
Twice.
introduced, he means he basically...
I Malorted him.
Yeah, he
you
Malorted
did.
me.
Sidebar, my barber, a shout out to John and Vinny's barbershop too, on Fullerton Avenue in Chicago. He would trick you and be like, "Oh, you're visiting from out of town? Great. Here's a shot. Welcome to Chicago." And it would be Malort, and he would just do it with people. Excuse me.
I actually have a
people.
bottle
Yeah.
of barrel-aged Malort, just so you know.
Yeah, there is such a thing.
It says BAM.
Barrel-aged Malort. Oh my God,
It's
that's
classy.
Kind of after Aviary, that whole technical supermodel, if you go there, we had 42 types of ice, just to kind of clue you in about what was going on there. Building jungle birds and amazing stuff, that techniques and distilling cocktails that I've never done since, and very few people touch.
I thought
so.
Anvil was crazy.
Yeah.
That's the place we have here in Houston that if you go in and order a drink and it calls for cinnamon, it's like they grind it there in the bar. But yeah, there's obviously, if you can bartend successfully at one of those places, then you've got some skills. So
Indeed.
We'll tie it all to Courvoisier coming up in just a moment. In fact, we'll taste some Courvoisier coming up.
Can't wait.
And I'm very excited about that. It's Smoking and Toasting, and we will be right back. Welcome back. It is Smoking and Toasting, show number 338. We are halfway to 400 and very, very excited about it. So, welcome to the program. Michael Fawthrop is with us today. He is the brand ambassador for Courvoisier. So, Michael, for those who maybe aren't as well versed in all of the spirit world, what exactly is cognac? How is it made? How is it different from other spirits?
Great question. Cognac is made from white wine. The grape is called Uni Blanc.
Uni Blanc,
Uni
which
Blanc.
means one
One white.
one white. Okay.
It's UGNI. And 99% of cognac is that grape, Uni Blanc. You
Okay.
can do four or five more. They're actually trying to add more right now, but we'll get to that later.
Okay.
It is distilled on pot stills, so
Okay.
same way that
Same way as like a
rye
rum or,
whiskey
yeah.
a rum or Irish whiskey, most famously. Then it is at that point it's called eau de vie, which
Okay.
is translates to water of life, and that's really kind of
I love that.
it's kind of my mantra.
I'm going when I get done with the show. I'm going to go home and I'm going to tell my wife, "You are my eau de vie." think I'm a man with a future tonight?
I think that's an aphrodisiac, actually.
You are my eau de vie.
At that point, the eau de vie is aged in oak. It can be French oak. Most of the
Most
time, it's
often it
French
is,
oak.
right? Yeah.
But of course, we have a Mizunara finish, which is Japanese oak as well. So it doesn't have to be French oak, but it has to be oak.
And what are the differences in what your expectations are from between the French and the Japanese oak?
Oh, great question. It's different fruit flavors, like more tropical fruit flavors from the Japanese oak, papaya, banana, mango. Where the French oak, you're getting kind of the orchard fruit flavors. You're going to get a lot more citrus. You're going to get a
Citrusy
lot
stuff, yeah.
more apricot, peach. Also, of course, we love our baking spices from our French oak, where the Japanese oak is going to be a lot more incense spice. I would say, kind of,
Almost clove, those kind of things.
Sandalwood, no, more like sandalwood Egyptian spices
Oh, okay,
and
gotcha.
incense, and it's. Go ahead.
And I was just going to say, we called the title of the show "Getting Fancy" with Courvoisier because, in my mind, and tell me why do I have this perception? Courvoisier, cognac in general, just seems a little fancier than whiskey or rum or tequila. Those seem more like party, whereas cognac seems more refined. Is that actually true? And if yes or no, where did the perception come from?
I'll answer that in a couple statements too as well.
Okay.
One, cognac is meant to be enjoyed any moment, any time. We're having fun right now. Share a cognac, laugh it up as well. Just like any spirit, any
just
drink.
like tequila or whatever.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
like tequila, just like rye whiskey, take some. When I'm in London with bartenders, I actually do shots of cognac quite a bit as well too. So it
I love
really
that.
depends on. And here, of course, Americans, we're all about our VSOP and our XO. So we're about taking time and looking great, feeling great, savoring the flavors, whether it's with a fine meal, a beautiful duck that's roasted, or an incredible cigar. And then why you feel fancy drinking it is, one, it is awesome. But I think because it's a geographical indicator, cognac is, and that's in the 1909, the BNIC was created to regulate cognac for the French government and promote cognac across the world. So any time that's a geographical indicator, you feel very fancy because you're at the top of the tier. Everything else is just brandy afterwards.
And plus, the French have just the sound of their language comes off more fancy because so many things in the
It's a beautiful
wine
language.
world are basically just named after the region that they come from, right?
Oui.
What's that?
Oui.
Yeah. Yeah, but it works so much better because of the way the French words sound, right? If you developed some great new varietal of grape and you marketed it out there based on where it was developed
In Enos, Texas.
and you called it Brownsville, it just wouldn't have the same joie de vie.
Correct about the joie de vie. And because it is marketed as, for so long, foreign products were foreign, sexy, extravagant, exotic, very high quality. And you could kind of, obviously with Courvoisier in particular, we've graced royal courts of Europe. So when you see it, next to some of the Swiss kings, Danish kings, most famously Napoleon, King Edward VII in England, you're like, oh, these guys really must be doing something right, So
I love it.
I think it's also that 90s culture of having the snifter, having the moment of,
The
Tony
swirling it.
Soprano
Yeah,
swirling and
sure.
everything, counting his
warming
cash.
it in your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
so
love
that was a whole thing. And obviously, kind of the whole part about the uniqueness, because I tell people all the time, cognac is a unicorn surrounded in fog. You think about, what's it's made from? How is it actually made? Why are these letters on the bottle?
Right.
And so they do mean something because these people respect and are so proud of who they are, just like Texans. And they literally went to the government and said, we are so special, we make such great stuff that we need to tell the whole world about it, and you need to promote it for us.
My favorite, you brought the Tony Soprano image to mind, and my favorite scene, if I'm remembering the scene correctly, because it's been a few years since I watched The Sopranos, but it's the one where he's like holding the cognac and he's swirling it around, and they're asking him, "So what is it that you do again?" And he swirls the cognac and he goes, "Waste management." Something about that. I just love the way he says that, and the cognac. It was just the perfect juxtaposition. But I digress. Before we taste, because we're about to, Ian has poured us a beer, and I thought we should taste this before it gets too warm because I really like my beer cold. So this is from, and I love this brewery. They're in Blanco, Texas. The name of the brewery is Real Ale, and they have a number of great beers, including
Great beers.
The one that put them on the map was Fireman's Four. That's
Fireman's
their
Four.
amber, which is just so
Their
good.
coffee porter is
absolutely.
unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And
Whoever
it is
thinks of
the
their
coffee
names is
porter.
amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got some great IPAs too. So I thought it'd be interesting to taste their Bock. Here in Texas, we think of Bock as being almost synonymous with Shiner.
Right.
You know, because
Shiner
it's
is the Bock.
such a big deal in Texas.
This is in that style. This is, I think this is an honestly fantastic beer.
It really
if you're
is.
gonna do it. And it is a direct, I don't know if it's a direct competition with Shiner Bock. You notice they have the Bock in almost the exact same font.
Almost the
as
same font,
Shiner.
yes.
So I think it's kind of a nod to,
Maybe
or a shout out kind of.
It might. I was going to say it might not be disrespectful. It might be out of respect.
Right.
You know?
I think that's kind of where they're going, and it's Hill Country Bock, which is also, they're not far from each other.
It's really roasty. The roasted malt is the first thing, and I've always said this about Shiner. It's true also about Fat Tire, and I just think it's absolutely true that this beer would work very well with almost any cigar.
This beer is sweet and pretzel-y, like that pretzel dough kind of thing. It's got so much malt character right up front. I absolutely love this beer.
Yeah, it's really good.
And I don't ever mentally compare it to Shiner Bock. I think they're just different beers, but this is fantastic, and I have crushed many 12 packs of this.
So this reminds me a little bit flavor-wise of Shiner Bock, but it's slightly more Bavarian, slightly more pretzel, slightly more of that Eastern Europe sort of a flavoring to it. I absolutely dig it. I think it's, as you said, crushable, but still big on flavor.
Yeah, and it's coming in at 4.9%, so it's not like a super big beer. It's reasonably sessionable as well.
So now I'm hoping that this will not put us on a weird path in terms of going next to the Courvoisier, because generally speaking, the one you have to watch for is IPAs. That's where you got some palate wrecking potential.
I'm pretty sure there are some recipes that have both grapes and grain. I think they go well together.
Yeah, I think so. So we'll move now to the first expression of Courvoisier and see what we have here, and I'll let you basically just talk us through it. Okay.
Of course, I wish I had a piece of cheese for this beer. Actually,
a piece of cheese sounds great. That's what my buddy Pat Fant always. That's how he says, "Let's get lunch." He goes, "You want to get a piece of cheese?"
There's a Kerrygold Dublin cheese. Have you ever had that?
That is one of my favorite cheeses in the world.
It goes with beer in
It's
a way.
so good. Oh, so I'm gonna tell you one more. There is a beer, the little market downstairs at my apartment building, right? The Phoenicia. And the frustrating thing about them is they'll get great stuff in, and then once it sells out, you never see it again.
Right.
And I think that may be the case. But they had some cheeses that were made with beer, and not just beer.
Love it.
They were made with several different beers. One was made with Heady Topper, one was made with Harpoon IPA, and another was made with I'll think of it in a second. Anyway, they were all amazing and delicious.
Oh, that sounds so good.
I especially like the Heady Topper. Something about that just totally worked with my little rice crackers. Love it.
Were they washed? The rind washed? with beer?
I don't know because they were already kind of pre-cut into rectangular shapes, so I don't know exactly how they did it. But I know it was what caught my eye because they have lots of cheeses there. What caught my eye was the beer logo. I saw the Harpoon logo. I was like, wait a second.
What? Dude, smell this.
I know what the other one was, by the way.
This is not bad milk that I'm trying to get you to smell. I mean, for real.
Yeah. The other one that I was trying to think of was Voodoo Ranger IPA.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And that one was great too. So, but now, and 180 degrees from this.
Glad you really picked this beer because it's so malty.
Yeah.
And as you were mentioned, cognac is made from grapes, so you're going to see this is a lot lighter, brighter, more fruit driven. Instead of that malt, beautiful body yeast that we had just before. Dude. What you're drinking is our Courvoisier XO Royale. So this
So XO means what?
XO means it's a category of cognac, means extra old. It's a minimum 10-year blend.
It has to be at least 10 years.
The youngest eau de vies in the blend have to be 10 years old. Everything else can either at least be 10 or supersede that.
If you had several that were 15, 20, but one that was 8, it couldn't be an XO.
Could not be an XO. It would be a Napoleon at that point.
Okay.
VS is 2 years old. VSOP is 4 years. Napoleon 6. XO is 10. This is XO Royale, but it would fit into the XXO category, a minimum 14-year blend.
Oh,
so
wow.
this is great.
And do those indicators work just for cognac, or is that true for other things like rum as well?
Just a cognac thing.
Okay.
You can also, anytime you have an XO rum, they're probably nodding to the cognac space or cognac blenders. They really, because cognac influences the whole world actually, with single malt Scotch whiskey, with American whiskey, with rum, because cognac is such an old region, dating back even before when the BNIC regulated it. They've been making distilled wine for hundreds and hundreds of years. It really influences the whole world and how they position it. But this is called XO Royale because of our point where we did grace the royal courts and King Edward VII, that we had some eau de vie for him from, it was very, very good. I actually got to try just about a half ounce of it too. The eau de vie's dated back to 1840. And so our chief blender tried the eau de vie. And this is his modern interpretation of that eau de vie that he tried.
Now, I'm going to be very unscientific here, but I do feel fancy when I'm drinking this.
Out of that glass,
you know, especially
too.
out of this glass. But no, it really is. It's a there's a certain like sort of emotional sensation that you get where you go, man, I'm drinking something really nice, and I feel really good about myself right now.
It's so soft and delicious. Like the term soft is such a weird thing to apply to a drink outside of, like, you know, we think of, you know, soda pops as soft drinks, whatever. But like this has such a just gentle, delicious.
Yes. And there's so much going on flavor wise. I mean, you get the grapes, but there's also all of this, things that are kind of almost hard to break out right away. But I get, you know, in addition to the grape varietals, you can get oak, you can get.
Do you get any stone fruits?
Definitely baking spice. Stone fruit.
Like apple or pear in particular?
I think there is a bit of pear there because I really like pear, and that's an easier thing maybe for me to identify than apple. But I like that.
I describe this like someone rented me a penthouse at the Four Seasons, put my head down on a pillow, and let me smoke a beautiful caramel apple cigar.
The caramel, like, I was just sitting enjoying just the retrohale of it.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so complex.
It's wonderful.
There's so much going on there, and there's like oak at the outside fringes of it. The apple, I kind of like. Apple is one of those interesting flavors. I get that in certain whiskeys, get that in the cognac. There's a little like a kiss of vanilla in there, like a sweetness that's kind of like tucked in behind everything else. It's really, really interesting how it's all put together.
Michael, what is a bottle of this go for at retail?
This is going to be $3 to $3.50.
Okay.
And you guys deserve this. That's all I'm saying. You don't have to feel fancy. You deserve it.
I do feel fancy, and I won't argue with you about deserving it, but I do feel fancy. I really do. This is wonderful. We're going to talk about this some more because this bears introspection. It's not one of those things you drink and go, wow, that was really good. What do we have next on the show? Like this bears like some time
Cruising in,
and some
we're never
thought.
the same after that day.
and you'll never be the same if you hang with us all the way to drinking
And
news.
then they were lost in France.
Good place to be lost. All right, we're going to take a break, and we will return shortly. It's Smoking and Toasting, our program all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. Coming up, we're going to tell you about some cigars to watch for, and, of course, we're only a few segments now away from drinking news, and so that's something to look forward to as well. Thank you for being a part of our 338th show with our special guest, Michael Fawthrop. He's the brand ambassador for Courvoisier, and we still have more of that to taste as well. It's Smoking and Toasting. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting, and our program is all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. And I just want to say to you guys that honestly, the best parts of this show always happen in the breaks between the segments. So we're brilliant in between the breaks.
That's right.
I just want you to know.
Brilliant.
When the
It's
mics
amazing.
are on, we're like,
if you
cognac,
guys,
good.
if you guys,
Geniuses.
if you guys were only here for the breaks, you would realize what amazing broadcasters we are. No, Michael Fawthrop is our guest. He is with Courvoisier, and you were saying something actually during the break, and I said, hold up, because I really want to go over that on the show. You were saying cognac is
All about.
All about communication, trust, and friendship. Just like you guys, really.
no, but see that really is, it gets to the core of why we actually really enjoy doing the show. And we've talked about it.
Yes.
There's a social aspect to this, and it all started when Ian and his then fiance, now his wife, came over to my house. We were sitting out on my balcony, and I was pulling some cool beers and stuff out of the refrigerator, and we were pouring them and just talking about them. And it was that socializing, it was that vibe. But when they left, I told my wife, I said, that's a show. That's a show.
it.
And that is literally how Smoking and Toasting was born.
And that's how you make community.
Mm-hmm.
You take a risk, you grab your friend and say, hey, let's do this. And so it's really,
Mark
really
that
good.
one too.
Mark that one.
Thank you. It's all right.
And so just like, when you go to cognac, you really understand everyone touches the cognac. Whether you drive the tractor that picks the grapes, you rotate the barrels, or you work at the cooperage, or you pick the grapes yourself, you work at a visitor center that tastes cognac to
Sure.
tourists, you work at a hotel for people to stay at when they're drinking cognac as well. You drive a boat ride to take people from maison to maison. Maisons are mansions and distilleries.
Okay.
And so it's castles and distilleries is kind of more what they look like as well.
Yeah, right.
The more
It's
time,
French,
the more
remember?
time I spend with this, it's like I get the oak, and I'm picking up like a chocolate or almost brownie kind of.
Do you guys get any of the oxidized port as well, too? Kind of that old port?
I
No.
do
I don't know
love
that I'm picking
port,
up on
but
that.
I do love port, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I have to go.
Take another sip.
We'll have to do more research, is what we like to say here on the show. By the way, speaking of research, Ian, have you been back to the Hill Country Bock?
Does it do
since
interesting things to the
since you
Bock?
put the cognac in your palate?
Oh, it's like a straight up barley pop.
It
Yep.
sure is. Yes.
Wow.
It sure is. It's like barley explosion.
I kind of love that. I love what it does.
It's a very different taste for beer. There's not that many beers that are barley forward in that way. And then you go back to this again, and it's just wonderful.
And that's why cognac goes with everything.
Cognac with everything. This makes me
everything.
want to sit out with a cigar too.
Well, I am jonesing for a cigar right now because this has just totally got that going. And so the next time when you come back for the next show, we will go on location so we can
fabulous.
smoke and enjoy it with the
Yeah, that
cognac.
would be amazing.
That would be a great deal of
We
fun.
should figure that
Obviously,
out.
we can't do that here in the studio, but yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Speaking of cigars, what was released last year as a line of limited edition cigars has now become a full-time brand, even though it's in limited quantities. We're talking about the CAO Pilon Añejo. It's been released as a limited thing. It's now shipping out to retailers all over the world. It was rolled in Danlí, Honduras, at the Hatza factory. And CAO Pilon Añejo consists of a Sumatra wrapper grown in Ecuador with a Honduran binder and mix of Dominican and Nicaraguan filler. I've had this cigar. It's really
it's really
wonderful.
nice, yeah.
And so I'm really excited that they are.
It's one of
that they're
those that
putting it out.
CAO, even when they were having some of the quality control issues and things like that.
And they came out with that Pilon, yes,
Yeah.
and that was very consistent, and you could count on it to be good. Speaking of things you can count on, EP Carrillo is excited to announce their newest creation. It's the EP Carrillo Short Run 2023. So Short Run is when they release like a limited run, basically, and what they do is they take tobaccos that are really interesting, but they may not have a huge quantity of, and they do a small batch and release it that way, and it causes, or it brings about some really interesting and unique one-of-a-kind blends. It's made at the Oscar Valadares Tobacco and Company factory in Honduras, and the 2023 version will be carefully crafted and presented in 3 sizes: Robusto, Toro, and a Gordo. Each cigar wrapped in a Habano seed Ecuadorian wrapper, and underneath a Nicaraguan binder, along with fillers from Nicaragua and Honduras. And you've smoked a GAR before, right? A GAR?
Yes.
Yeah. So GAR is basically it's from the.
I also lived
Grand
in Liberty,
Habano.
Texas. I've caught a GAR.
Okay. Yeah,
It's like, I think I
Just
ate
so
that
you know.
last night.
yeah, that's not a delicious fish.
No.
Grand Habano is announcing the release of their new GAR American Standard cigar coming in September. It is a medium to full-bodied Nicaraguan puro, and it's a cigar that will be available in Robusto, Gran Robusto, Imperial, Czar, and Grandioso, and the prices are incredibly reasonable. They start at $5.50 for the Maduro,
Nice.
and go up to $7 is the highest price. That's MSRP, of course, for the Grandioso. So a few cigars to watch for when you are visiting your local store. We're going to take a break and come back. We're getting very close to drinking news, but we also have got lots to talk about and more cognac to taste from Courvoisier. We'll be right
It's
back.
kind of talking to you now.
Welcome back. It's Smoking and Toasting, show number 338, and we are heard all around the country, or at least a couple of places.
338, we're still great.
On broadcast radio. So thank you to all of those of you who hear our show on great News Talk AM radio stations and other places. So you can get us almost anywhere, by the way. Instagram, YouTube. We're even still available. Does anybody do Facebook anymore? Is that a thing?
I think us old people do Facebook.
I have
from
an
time to
aunt who
time.
posts all kinds of silly photos of her dinner. So maybe she's still on.
I think
Facebook.
I'm inadvertently part of Facebook because I put stuff up on Instagram and it goes to Facebook.
It goes
too.
to Facebook too. Yeah, and that happens. So during the break, I asked our guest, Michael Fawthrop, who's the brand ambassador for Courvoisier, because we still have one more expression to taste, right? And the first one was so amazing. And so I asked him, is this like better than the one we just tasted? And he immediately says, oh, yes. And
Absolutely.
And Ian and I both went, oh, my God. Because the first one was so good. So tell us about what is it that trumps that?
So Courvoisier, what you're drinking is the Courvoisier L'Essence. So this means the essence, basically drinking our soul right now. This was invented in 2009 by our 5th generation chief blender, Jean-Marc Olivier. And so he was a visionary about making super premium cognac and very, very old cognac, specifically with the Bordeaux Cru. That's the smallest sub-region of the cognac.
Okay.
That contributes a ton of floral, honey notes that we love to round it out. This is a minimum 50-year blend, and this is just a work and a passion project of love.
This is made work of art, is what it is.
It's
I
art,
haven't even tasted it
essentially.
yet.
There's a little bit of earth in this that I kind of pick up on the nose that I didn't get in the other one.
I do believe the French word is terroir.
Terroir.
Now,
Excuse
see,
me.
I was going to be overly simplistic when I was doing the nose on this. I just went, my brain just said candy.
Candy. Honey, tobacco leaf. Nougat
tobacco
is
notes, definitely.
to me as well too. Do you guys remember those nougats?
Yes.
They when I was a kid, I always loved those things, picking them out of my teeth, and I just I taste so much light elegance. The tannins have been digested completely from the French oak on this. The honey is a beautiful chef's kiss, and just that fresh tobacco leaf leaves the end of the palate like a beautiful floral
I haven't
note.
even tasted it yet. And my mouth is just watering.
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
madness.
In fact, I kind of don't even want to taste it
I need
because
you
I'm
to
afraid it's going to.
describe.
You
I need you to
should.
go
It's
along
gonna
and
ruin
describe
me.
every meal that I'm about to eat at all times.
It will arguably be the
elevate-
best thing you put in your mouth all week.
This is going to ruin me. Is what it's going to do. That's what I have.
I am so not saying so many
Yeah,
jokes.
yeah. Oh, I know.
So many things.
It was a softball.
Remember the old days before we were on broadcast radio when there's no way we would have let that pass? Yeah. And now we're like,
You're like,
No joke. This is really, if you taste it, go ahead. Yeah, it's really a party in your mouth with the DJ. And
so I'll just say my my daughter-in-law, Brianna, who's been on the show before, she always, complains to me like you've spoiled, like you've ruined me, because I taught her to drink like really good tequilas, and then she goes and says, yeah, but I can't afford to buy these kind of tequilas. You've messed it all up for me. That's kind of what I'm afraid of when I taste this.
There is a silky and buttery texture to this that is unbelievable. Just the texture alone. We're not even getting to the flavors yet. Just
Holy
the
cow.
texture alone
Yeah.
is unbelievable on this.
Right. So when I said we're getting fancy with Courvoisier, that texture really underscores the word fancy in my mind. That's why, and we talked about this. That's why I feel fancy when I'm drinking this. It's just there's no other way to describe it that's accurate for me.
I think it's funny
The
because
floral notes are just unbelievable. Like, especially in the retro hail, you get almost the like next to the stem kind of floral notes as well. It's really, really interesting.
Holy cow.
if you close your eyes, you're really just right in cognac. You're basically in the barrel. So.
Yeah, and I've never been, so I have this mental image
Oh, yeah.
of what it would be like to be, sitting under a great French oak tree, sipping this, enjoying.
With a little bit of cheese.
And it leaves the terroir a little bit on the lips as well. I would have said earth, but
Terroir
I'm learning
sounds so much
French.
cooler. Yeah.
The terroir is really accurate, and that borderie will kind of contribute those earthy notes. When it gets this old, you'll start to have that beautiful texture that's just the softest pillow on your tongue. And it's funny you feel fancy because I think that you just haven't drank enough cognac to know the quality of cognac. Because they control it and regulate it so much. The BNIC just has such a high standard for the floor and the base that we don't see all the time in other spirit categories.
Let me ask you about aging. With spirits like whiskey, for example, there's a certain place where you reach in terms of aging that you're probably not necessarily helping anymore if it's getting too old, right? Is cognac that way? In other words, you said this is 50 year, right?
Minimum 50 year.
Minimum 50 years.
Yeah.
So if you were to continue to age those and it was 100 year, would it be even a step better than this, or is there a place where there's kind of diminishing returns?
The kind of common
because
knowledge
Scotch
is
turns
75.
around at like 44
Right.
Yeah.
or
Right.
something that, right?
You don't get much older than early 40s with Scotch.
Yeah.
Really, 75 years is kind of the common general roadmap, I would say, for people. After 75 years, they say it doesn't contribute as much. And
Doesn't give
it'll
you
just
as
be
much
spent.
to
Yeah.
And
then you
over-
might
or
as well
over-
Very
oaked.
diminished returns at that point.
Yeah, and you lose over 75 years. The angel share you're going to lose is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, pretty obvious.
So,
Wow.
and it really is art and it's passion because this, as you say, you have to do it for a minimum of 50 years. So that means you have to be patient, caring, tasting, loving, and honestly, 50 years is a lifetime for some people.
Your son is the one that's bottling it.
And that's
Right,
what I
right.
mean by the friendship of cognac. Because if you were a chief blender, but the generation before me, and he was the next generation, he would have to rely and trust what we both did
Right.
beyond death. So if you ask the right French person, they believe that the person lives on through the cognac and the spirit.
That makes I understand that thinking, and there's a certain again with a spirit that is this refined, and this has this degree of, I'll just say, fanciness to it. It lends itself to that kind of thinking, right? That you are somehow that you sort of live on through the spirit that you've made, that you've bottled, and think how much it would suck to be the son.
That has to
And dad didn't do a very good job, right? And all these years later, you're like, Dad.
Well, you got to make your own, blend it in with Dad's, and make it great.
Right.
And I think that's what my therapist called healing my family trauma.
I call it making cognac great again. But we'll just move on from there. Tell me a little bit about the aging process itself. Does it stay in the same barrels? Is it moved from one type of barrel or cask to another? How does that exactly work?
It stays in the same barrel, but barrels at Courvoisier, we use barrels up to 5 times. So for our older cognacs, we're going to start with a new barrel. And for our younger cognacs, we're going to put them in a barrel we've used probably 3 or 4 times. The most we use them is 5 times. At that point, we're just expecting.
And what does it do to a barrel? How is a barrel different if it's been used 3 or 4 times?
Great question.
Than if it's brand new oak?
It's pre-season. So just like Scotch whiskey, they pre-season with sherry or another fortified wine. Imagine pre-seasoning with cognac. My favorite bourbon that's cognac finish is Parker's Heritage. And so imagine, that light fruit finish that Parker's has. That's from the cognac barrel finish. So because this guy, you want to use it brand new because it's going in for 50 years. You don't put something
right. You don't want to start with a used cask.
With a used cask. But younger cognacs like VSOP or VS, think about it. It's pre-seasoned, preconditioned. They can really excel in the best environments, just like having enough water and sunlight in your garden.
Wow. And so when the cognac goes into the barrel, does the distiller already know how long he intends for it to stay there? Or is it a process where maybe at a certain point you stop, you taste, and go, all right, yes, or no, let's keep aging?
That decision is made after distillation. So they'll make the eau de vie, and they'll, on the tasting panel, there's 12 people on our tasting panel. So it's just like YouTube times 6, and all tasting cognacs every morning together. And the eau de vie,
the one job in the world that's better than yours.
I think it is. I think it is as well. Being our chief blender is really just a superstar. He's worked at Courvoisier for over 19 years, so he's done his time. But at distillation, they make that choice and say this eau de vie should be an XO, this eau de vie should be VS, VSOP, or
so they can kind of tell from the qualities of it even at that earliest stage.
At that early stage,
how it will best be used.
You know that moment where you wake up way too early and you walk outside and everything's covered in dew, and then the sun comes out.
And it's like reflecting off the dew on the grass.
That's what this tastes like. That is
I like that.
Absolutely amazing.
You are wildly poetic at times.
Mark Twain over here.
You are wildly poetic at times.
It's pretty amazing.
And by contrast, I have a drinking news coming up that's basically just, jokes about manhood. So, and I mean manhood in the physical sense. D jokes is the subject of can we say? See, I don't know if we can say. We can say.
I don't know.
I got a review. See, I used to know all this stuff back in my radio broadcasting days.
I mean, you could say Dick Clark.
Right. I used to know what you could say.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. Basically, we have some Dick Clark jokes on today's drinking news.
Let me go grab Long John Silver and see what's going on.
There you go. See, that is actually in the drinking news report. You'll see. But Ian, of course, is poetic. He's waxing poetic about morning dew.
I started waxing poetic about morning dew, and you started making
I went for the Dick Clark
joke.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I have to say, this is a special experience. Like this is one. If you were over at my house and you brought a bottle of this, and I knew it would be, I'm going into my humidor for the best cigar that I have to go with this. This is not where I'm going to smoke a JR alternative. Yeah. This is where I'm going to break out something really, really good. Because this is, this just takes it to a whole new level. What is this bottle retail for?
This is going to be north of 5,000. Yeah, absolutely. You can find this in Texas, here in Houston. But you're
it's
going
in that case at the end of the aisle of specs.
Yeah, exactly. The one where I walk by and glance longingly, and the employee there at the store looks at me like, "Not you, buddy.
Not with those shoes.
Not with
You're wearing flip flops.
Not with that Hawaiian shirt. You're not. Yeah. So 100%. But it is fun to walk by. Although I have noticed, in fairness, some of those bottles are migrating out of the locked case at the end of the aisle and are now in the. I've seen like $300-400 bottles of tequila and whiskey, and some of them are right there on the shelf,
yeah.
in front of you. Meanwhile, Walgreens can't keep you from stealing a toothbrush, so they've got it locked up under. What do the liquor stores know? I mean, maybe it's a little harder to hide a bottle of Courvoisier in your pants.
A big suitcase of tequila kind of coming out as well.
That's exactly right. Although I did see a story when I was looking for a drinking news story about a guy who did hide a bottle of scotch in his pants and was caught in the parking lot. But I don't know.
At least he was going fancy.
I don't know if I want this after it's been in your pants. I'm just gonna say.
I would never do that to you.
But this certainly is wonderful, and if it just so happens that you feel like, topping Ian and I off with this, we would never object to that sort of thing. As Ian pushes his a little closer, and we will
to the brim.
We will take a break here, and we will be right back. It's Smoking and Toasting. Welcome back into Smoking and Toasting. Our show is, of course, all about craft beer, fine spirits, like we're drinking right now, and Dick Clark jokes, yes, which we'll be getting to momentarily. Our guest is Michael Fawthrop. He is with Courvoisier, and he has really very kindly brought us some excellent stuff. And I thought the first one was good. It was but then you moved to this Water of Life. What is this one called?
L'Essence.
Essence. Yeah, L'Essence.
I like how the training's working though. The Water of Life is retaining.
Water of Life.
Water of Life.
That's totally staying with me. I am totally going home and laying it on my wife that she is my eau de vie. And we'll see how that works out. I'll report back next week. This is really wonderful though, and thank you for sharing with us. Now we're gonna do something here that's probably a palate wrecker for the Courvoisier. So Ian, you may want to take this opportunity before we start
enjoy this.
Enjoy this.
It's a shame to even drink this so fast. This is so good that I am taking the tiniest sips of it.
But I will tell you, if you had a bottle of this is one that you would take tiny sips of, because you would not want.
I would drink it with an eyedropper. Yeah. It's so,
a little pipette into your mouth.
Pipette, yes.
I like it.
Well, thanks for letting me share this with you guys too. Big thanks and small sips.
People ask me all the time, what made you want to start this show, and I always have the same answer: samples. And so to get to sample something like that, that's a pretty cool thing. That's why we get up in the morning. All right, so we're going to try a beer here that comes from Matchless Brewing, and Matchless, we've had these guys' product on the show before, but it's actually been a very long time, and they are well known for making interesting IPAs, and this one's not a double or a double dry hopped or anything like that. It's just a hazy IPA out of Tumwater, Washington, and Matchless Brewing, called Jetplane.
Rainbow Jetplane.
Yeah.
India Pale Ale.
Wow,
I think they're trying to be all inclusive because it has Nectaron, Matuka, Nelson Sauvin, and Eldorado hops.
This is
basically has every kind of hop.
This is a very hop diverse brewery.
Pilsner grain and
I'm getting so much citrus on the nose here. This is just
particularly
almost
grapefruit peel, really, is to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see how it goes here.
Wow.
Do you mind if I check out the?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is really good. This is so. Being an IPA fan,
this has a kind of a malty grain.
Yes, it does.
Kind of a gritty malty grainness on the nose. It's really
being an IPA fan, and Hazy's being my favorite style of IPA. I've tasted lots and lots and lots of different ones, and it's getting harder and harder to surprise me with one that's different from everything that I've tasted before. This one is different from everything that I've tasted before. It is definitely a little malty on the front.
This one is really good. The malt on the front is punchy enough to cut
malt
through.
On the front and citrus on the finish.
And then citrus on the finish, and it still finishes with a little sweet instead of just bitter.
Almost like business in the front, party in the back.
And this is the
kind
mullet
of how it works. This is the mullet of
IPAs.
And that's even cooler than Rainbow Jetplane. I think they should have just called it the mullet.
The mullet.
I would have bought it out of just curiosity,
The structure is wonderful. The Pilsner grain, the lemongrass finish, and then that bright citrus there too.
It's so bright
really
on
nice.
It's so dark on the beginning and bright on the finish. It just takes you through that whole journey.
That's as balanced as I think almost anything we've had, especially for how big hoppy this is. Like, that's incredibly balanced.
And it's not surprising they have that many hops. Washington's actually the #1 supplier of hops in the world.
Well, and I'll just mention, whenever I see a beer that's using that many different hops as opposed to the ones that you hear about all the time, like Citra and some of that, you almost expect the funk factor to be higher because some of these different strains can be really funky. This is not.
I think this. I think the
Jetplane.
hops on this, while they're out there in a huge way, I think they were blended very subtly.
And we will continue
With
to enjoy
skill.
this because Drinking News is next. We'll be right
ardor.
back. Smoking a toast. Welcome back into Smoking and Toasting. Our show is all about craft beer, fine spirits, and hand-rolled cigars. And our guest today from Courvoisier, you've picked an interesting, and I know you've got a limited time, so you were able to stay with us through this segment, which is great because this is our Drinking News segment. And I've talked today about our show being fancy, and we've had some very expensive Courvoisier on the program that we have just enjoyed. So I'm feeling very, very elegant. And so that means we're just about to go off the rails with that now because it's time for Drinking News.
Drinking news, drinking news. Now it's time for drinking news. That's right. We record this live every single week.
Yes, we do.
Drinking news, drinking news. Now it's time for drinking news. A Florida man with one arm said he had a gator for a pet. When asked about his absent arm, he said,
I had to take my gator to the vet.
drinking news, drinking news. Now it's time for drinking news.
Cheers, y'all. All right, a reminder before we start that Drinking News is where we bring you a non-fake news story that is sometimes, but not always, about drinking, but is always best listened to when you've been drinking. And we've been drinking some fancy stuff today. So
I've been drinking fancy.
yeah, we're
I'm ready to learn.
In today's Drinking News, we're going to take a quick break from our usual stories about stupid criminals or people who do amazingly questionable things while drunk, or people who just generally...
You talking about me, boss?
Yeah, or people who just generally come from Florida. Instead, we're going to focus on a relatively new cosmetic procedure that's been getting some attention lately. The procedure is, wait for it, one where men have the substance that women sometimes use for lip filler injected into their penis to try and give it some additional, we'll go with the word girth.
Oh.
Yes. Now, I don't know about you guys. I don't have any problem getting a shot in the arm or even in my butt cheeks.
Trying to add some
yeah.
presence.
Yes. Yeah. I don't have a problem getting a shot even in my butt or most other areas of my body. But if you start waving a needle around and you get anywhere close to Little Cruz, that's what I call it, then you and I are going to have a problem.
Some outies are going to become innies pretty fast.
I'm sitting rather uncomfortably in this chair right now just talking about it, okay? And needle plus my Long John Silver, that's another thing I call it. It equals no thank you, okay? I'm just fine with where I'm at based on what nature gave me, and I will be sitting this one out. Thank you very much.
You don't need that shot. It's in the first word in the sentence.
But a Texas man, 33-year-old Jordan Tennell, was excited to learn about the procedure, which basically injects a dissolvable gel into your disco stick. And he decided to give it a go. Oh. He told the Daily Mail.
That hurts just thinking about it.
He told the Daily Mail.
What are you gonna? Are you gonna ice it down? Like, how are you gonna?
You're just rapidly Googling how to recover from shooting yourself.
He said, seeing all the other guys in the football locker room and seeing what they were packing versus what I was packing, and knowing that I wasn't on par with the other guys, he said that had him insecure and wanting to up his game. So the filler used in the procedure is FDA approved for the areas of the face like the lips and not for the trouser snake, okay? Producers or providers rather call it. They use it off-label. That's what they call it.
Use it
That's
off-label.
their phrase, not mine.
Whoever wants to inject
We
something
have
called
an off-label
off-label.
procedure we're thinking about.
And here's $12,000. Jordan Tennell was happy with his $12,000 injection.
The needle looks like your Yeti straw.
Sidebar, was this in Tijuana at all? Like, at any time were they like, we need to leave Tijuana?
Oh yeah, if it's a medical procedure and you've got to go to Tijuana to get it, think
Questionable.
think hard, think really hard.
Yes.
So Jordan Tennell was happy with the $12,000 injection. He says that it has, quote, made his confidence go through the roof. But that was not the story for another Texas man named Paul, who only gives his first name in the story. 39-year-old Texas Paul told the reporter, I knew nothing about the procedure other than what was posted online, but I wanted it so badly. He went on to say, I shouldn't have paid the money. But it's one of those things. It's just an emotional thing for guys where it's like, if you have that sliver of hope, if it cost me some cash to get something that could potentially be good, I was willing to risk the money. Unfortunately.
You know, I want to point something out, too.
Yeah?
That it's okay to have a much more present member.
Yeah?
You got to have some personality, too, buddy.
Yeah.
Like, remember
Learn a
that.
couple jokes.
I'm just saying, personality gets you a long way.
Well, unfortunately for
I
Texas
mean, I
Paul.
don't know that, but I'm just saying.
Unfortunately for Texas Paul, who was hoping for a natural girth enhancement that, quote, nobody would ever be able to tell was there, instead ended up with, and I'm quoting here, a big, squishy, lumpy disaster, end quote.
Oh, God.
Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and
I
say...
mean, it got bigger.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think most men would not be pleased to have to describe their Wiener Schnitzel as anything resembling a big, squishy, lumpy disaster.
Now it looks like a
Just saying.
spatchcock chicken.
Paul told the Daily Mail, it
Because I said
basically looked
spatchcock.
like I had a pencil on either side of my one-eyed willy worm. That's not
a good one.
That's not what he called it, but for legal reasons, we're going to go with that. And he said it looked like they had just inserted this big, long, straight tube of filler. It was so obvious and unnatural looking. It made me very depressed, he said. I was like, what have I done? I've ruined
Looks like
something.
a garden snake ate a hedgehog.
I've ruined something that I should not have messed with. Fortunately, Texas Paul did some painstaking research, also known as using Google, and he found a company called Thallofill.
If only there was a device, a supercomputer that we could hold in our hand.
Paul found a company called Thallofill, which sounds like something I made up, but it is real, and they were able to correct his botched eggplant emoji. So, aren't the best drinking news stories always about this?
Yes.
So where does that leave us?
I'm a little ashamed to admit, but it's true.
I guess the moral of the story is that men should probably just be happy with whatever nature has given us. Of course, that's easy for me to say, but I'm kidding. But even if you're feeling like you were last in line when they handed out the ding-dong dimensions and that porn star John Holmes was ahead of you and took more than his fair share, there are a few phrases that you can tell yourself that might make you feel better. Things like, size doesn't matter. Or, it's not the size of the wand, it's how you wave it. Or even, stand back, I don't know how big this thing gets. It reminds me of my favorite story about baldness that goes something like this. When we're born, each of us are given just so many hormones. If you want to use yours to grow hair, that's your business. I think we've gotten off track here, and I apologize. Reporting live from Texas, where I'll just use the words of the great poet Sir Mix-a-Lot and describe my Excalibur, that's another name that I use, as an anaconda. My name is Cruz, and that is your...
Drinking news, drinking news. That's our time for drinking news.
Cheers, y'all. Do you remember that classic line, right? My anaconda don't want none unless you got buns, hon.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, Sir Mix-a-Lot.
You didn't use purple-headed love monkey.
I did not.
That was an elongated story, my friend.
Yours is purple too.
If I'd been able to go a little longer with the story, we might have had a chance to use it. But I like that love monkey. That's good.
That comes from Jim Pruitt.
That's right. I remember that. I do remember that now. So I will say, I referenced the great poet Sir Mix-a-Lot. I will also say that when I was putting the notes together for today's show, and I was, writing down that we were having Michael from Courvoisier here, that all that was happening in my brain was the Pharrell song "Past the Courvoisier," and the crazy thing is, that's the only line I know from the song.
And
so it just went over and over and over.
And that's
and
like
over.
half the name of our drinks on menus at restaurants.
So are there other famous Courvoisier songs, or is that your one big shout out?
That's the big shout out of hip hop songs. Most famously, Tim Meadows. Obviously, if you know about the Ladies' Man character, the SNL character, had a great time.
Yeah, that was great.
That's how he ended the show every time.
Every time.
Yeah.
And he'd say it's a half bottle of Courvoisier left, and I got to move on. And so, also, it's in every movie in The Godfather and almost every classic Hollywood movie. If you'll just take a look, you'll see it quite a bit as well. I mean, just like Kahlua has been in every movie, Courvoisier has been in every movie.
Yeah, well, yeah. The dude wasn't necessarily, sipping Courvoisier, but
but
he would have if he could have afforded it, I think.
But you'll see Michael Corleone in Godfather 2 drink a lot of it as well. Too,
yeah. Well, again, it's fancy.
Even that Napoleon movie coming out with Joaquin Phoenix in November, he's going to be drinking a lot of Courvoisier.
No kidding, really?
Yeah.
That looks really interesting.
Spoiler alert. He drinks
Spoiler
Courvoisier.
alert.
So that looks interesting. The other one that looks interesting is the Oppenheimer thing. Have you seen? Oh yeah, it's what's his name that did Inception? I can't think of
Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan. This is his movie about the guy that invented basically the formula that led to the atomic bomb.
Right.
And it's supposed to be really good, but I haven't
Speaking
seen it.
of atomic bombs, you have a Barleywine over there.
I
don't
sure
you?
do. Should I pull that out of the bag here? Is it time?
Does a bear scratch his bottom in the woods?
Is a bear Catholic? Does the Pope? Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm a little dyslexic. Sometimes
Is there a Catholic in the woods?
Yeah, sometimes I get things mixed up. You do have a bottle opener, I hope. Very good.
I got the fancy one.
So this is from our friends at Gigantic Brewing Company. It's a barley wine, a barrel-aged barley wine, and the name of it is Massive.
Massive.
That is the name of the barley wine. I love that. And that would have been a better sound effect. We do all of our sound effects like live in the studio here for the
We
show.
sacrifice a beer every time we do a
That's
beer
right.
opening sound effect.
And that one would have been better, except there's a little bit of the paper banner over the bottle cap, so it made it not bounce with as much joy and
which is
and
much
sound.
gusto.
Yeah. Now, what we don't know about
I think
this,
you did it with Joie de Vie.
well, I love it. What we don't know about this barley wine until we taste it is it
Is it as massive as it's from
Well,
Gigantic, and
so
it's called Massive?
Ian is really picky about his barley wines because he doesn't really prefer the American style barley wine.
Yeah, American style barley wines. It's like
It has more fizz to it.
yeah, it's like having
more
a beautiful like amazing silky smooth chocolate mousse and someone sticks a pickle in the middle of it. That's what an American
Right
barley
on.
wine's like.
Wow.
I mean, I actually have another phrase that I use instead of pickle, but
Yeah.
I figured.
But I used most of those up
yes,
in the
you
drinking
used up
news,
all
so
of them.
I gotcha. So first of
we
all,
brew Massive each year with just
Oh.
one malt, and then
oh my goodness,
boil it for over 8 hours to create a barley wine with deep ruby color, rich malt flavor. This year, we chose Skagit Pilot malt, and then aged the beer in select rum, rye, and Highland Scotch, Islay Scotch, and
Ian.
Islay, and Irish whiskey barrels. The sticker on the crown identifies the barrels in which Massive was aged.
Ian, I was doing research while you were reading from the bottle.
This smells amazing.
Prepare yourself, my friend.
And this smells dark, grapey, and whiskey and woody.
This is an
Prepare
atomic
yourself-
bomb of chocolate malt. That's what.
Yeah, prepare yourself for date chocolate.
I love you, massive.
So we've had a number of their barrel-aged spirits before. I think this is the first barley
the
wine.
aftertaste keeps going.
Yes,
It's
I
just
know.
Like rich, like burnt caramel. Like
I think
it just
this is the
keeps
first
going on and
barley
on.
wine we've had from them, though. We've had a number of stouts from these guys. In fact, they did a whole series of
so
stouts,
good.
but this is something altogether different, and it is wonderful.
And it's coming in at a gentle kiss of about 14.3%.
Which explains why it's about a $35 bottle.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I was gonna say they did nail the ABV.
Yeah,
It totally
it's
did.
so good.
Well, and-
and it leaves this great roasty kind of kiss of coffee maltiness in your mouth.
And you mentioned the ABV. They did totally nail it because it is boozy, but it doesn't feel like it's being boozy for booze's sake.
No, it's
you know
boozy
what I mean?
in the right way that when your bartender mixes your drink just right.
Yes,
You
and
know
it's
that
just the
there's booze
right
in there,
amount
but
of
you
spirits.
don't. It's not the predominant flavor, you know.
And I'll just say this to you: if you are making margaritas and you are using a recipe, do what I do and improve your margaritas. Invert the amount of tequila to the amount of the
Instead
other
of
stuff.
2 to 1, it's 1 to 2.
Yeah, much more tequila.
That's
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
what I meant.
Fixes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that will make your margaritas much better. Because the ones where you go like to a restaurant or a bar that does great margaritas, there's always more tequila in those than in the
Or
the
as the
cheaper
Spanish would say, mas tequila.
Mas tequila. I think even Sammy Hagar says that, as a matter of fact. So, all right, I think we got to take a break here. We are we want to say, because I know you may have to leave after this segment. So, Michael, thank you so much for being here and for sharing these wonderful spirits
That
with
was
us
awesome.
from Courvoisier. We will never be the same. I can tell you that.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share with you guys. It was a fantastic time. You two are just wonderful.
And we will, by the way, be looking forward to having you back because you've definitely earned an anytime you want to come on the show spot with us here.
I would love that. Thank you guys. too.
right.
I'll bring more unique artifacts and
Smoking
works of
Toast,
art.
and we'll be back to wrap it all up after this. Welcome back to Smoking and Toasting. We want to say thanks to our guest who had to leave, but got to hang
He's got a
through.
very tight schedule today.
Yeah,
He's trying to get
right.
all of his stuff in
That
2
is
days.
the life of a brand ambassador.
Yeah.
Michael Fawthrop, who you may notice did not participate in our day drinking. He allowed us to do the sampling, but he was
He sampled
he sampled the beers.
the
That's true.
beers,
He
just
did sample
the most
beers. Yeah.
gentle
Yeah.
bit of beers, and obviously he's got a full day coming ahead. But no, he did not sample his cognac.
I guess
actually.
he has to pace himself, and I totally
And
understand
holy Toledo, that is some amazing cognac.
that. Unbelievably good. In fact, when I decided to title the show "Getting Fancy with Courvoisier," to be honest, I had no idea. I had no idea how fancy it was going to get. So that was a thing, and we certainly did enjoy it.
Well, I am incredibly honored just to get to even try. Like some of those at that level. I mean, a $5,000 bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, say what you will about it, but we got to try it, and that's its own little bit.
And
of
so this is what I would say to you. Sometimes there are events and stuff that you can buy tickets to for maybe $100 or $200, where you might get a little taste of something like that. I mean, there are some whiskeys available at the Whiskey Social, for example, that our buddy Chris Hart does, that are like they're whiskeys you would never be able to go and find and taste.
Well, you can't
and it
find
is
them,
totally worth.
and some of them are
Yeah.
outside the most people's affordability.
Absolutely, but it's totally worth the price of that ticket to
Ooh,
get to
speaking
actually
of which,
taste those
it's
things.
getting closer to Whiskey Social time. We
Do
got
you
a few
do you
months.
remember, by the way, the very first whiskey sniff that we did, where we got to taste that 31-year Balvenie?
Oh my gosh,
That was
yes.
unbelievably
John
good.
Wingo was there.
Yes, it was unbelievably
He was the
good.
brand ambassador at the
These
time. That guy
things,
was outrageously
yeah,
fun.
These things happen. Well, we are only at show number 338, folks. We're only halfway to 400, and we have a lot of tasting.
I mean, we
left
may
to do.
only have 1,000 of these shows in us, so
Yeah.
make sure you're listening to each one.
Absolutely. And make sure, by the way, if you have the opportunity, that you check out Gigantic Brewing Company's massive Barleywine because it's
S&T
massively
approved.
good.
It is so good.
Massively good. And I knew when I got a hold of this, I was like, gonna make my friend.
Oh
happy
no,
here.
it is unbelievable. Thank you, my friend. Mm-hmm.
So I would just say to everyone who's been a part of the show, thank you so much. Thanks to Adam in the Cloud, who'll have to do a little extra editing on this episode, but that's okay. It happens. Duty happens.
Courvoisier likes to say bad words sometimes.
Yeah.
That's all right. I like the Courvoisier.
So did we before we were, before we were broadcasting. Our program, by the way, is Smoking and Toasted, and we are heard on great radio stations like News Talk KBAR 1230 in Burley, Idaho, and News Talk 1560 in Abilene, Texas. Thank you guys for being a part of the program. We have more affiliates coming on soon, and we're very excited about that because we're just getting started in this syndicated world, and we're just learning how to not drop the F-bomb all the time.
That's right.
That's just how it works. It's just how it works. And for those of you who are regulars, shall we say, of Smoking and Toasting, we appreciate you guys the most. The people who've been here and who check us out on YouTube and who enjoy the program with us. And I was just thinking about, today, I was thinking about our cocktail expert, Chris Morris, and how he's been like a really good friend of the show and even did the alternate drinking news intro song.
That's right.
For us, which we have to play again every once in a while because that's just too. It's a little long, but it's totally worth it.
No, it's awesome. Like just the fact that he did. He's like, I'm going to do a drinking news song. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So when I brought it in, it was like that was amazing.
We do take your emails. The address is st@rfcmedia.com.
st@rfcmedia.com.
And we do take your emails. We will answer your email questions, whether they be about spirits or cigars or craft beers or, relationship advice, anything you want. You could ask us anything.
Yes, and remember, if you're watching us on YouTube or just have us on audio, put us on in the background. Lower the lights a little bit.
Absolutely.
It makes the mood.
It especially does when we're drinking $5,000 Courvoisier. That's what I'm telling you. I was, yeah.
I'm not going to wash my lips for a little while.
So I would just mention, by the way, that we have some emails that are piling up, so we'll try to get to some of those on next week's show. And you can send yours as well, st@rfcmedia.com. Ian, my friend, this has been a fun journey with you for 338 episodes. That includes the infamous lost episode, by the way. But I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing this with me. And finally today we got to a $5,000 beverage, and that's pretty cool.
That's pretty amazing.
We'll see you guys next week.
Is one of y'all going to say the Courvoisier thing, where I can tell by this bottle of Courvoisier that it's time for the show to end?
I think so. I think so. And I'll also say, as Pharrell did so brilliantly, pass the Courvoisier.
Pass the Courvoisier.
Pass the Courvoisier. Have a great week, my friends. We'll see you next time. And until we meet again and drink together, cheers, y'all.
Cheers, y'all.
Yeah!